There's a reason women lean in, laugh, and can't stop looking at a charismatic man, even when he barely says a word. If you've ever watched The Late Late Show with Craig Ferguson, you might have noticed something strange. Every time a woman sits across from him, within minutes, she's laughing, leaning in, and they are totally captivated. His secret isn't charm, rather, it's a specific way of speaking that you can learn, starting now. And today, I'll tell you exactly 8 speaking skills to make every word charismatic, and make your words feel just as interesting. After you watch this, your words will sound more charismatic than ever. So if you're truly interested in enhancing your charismatic personality, then subscribing to this channel is a great choice. Now let's get into our lesson. First, speak with emotional weight. So, you've already seen Craig Ferguson, who doesn't say much, but when he does speak, you actually feel it. That's what separates a normal guy from a charismatic one. You see, charismatic men don't just talk to communicate, they talk to connect. They don't just throw words into the air, they send emotions through their voice. It's like their words carry weight, not because they use fancy language, but because you can sense that they mean it. Think about this. You've probably heard someone say I'm fine, but you knew they weren't. And on the flip side, someone can say just a simple thank you, and it hits you deep, like they really meant it. That's emotional weight, and charismatic men use it all the time. And from psychology, there's actually a name for this. It's called emotional contagion. It means that people tend to catch the emotions of others, kind of like how you yawn when someone else yawns. So when a charismatic person speaks with emotion, calmness, excitement, seriousness, or warmth, you start to feel that emotion too, whether you realize it or not. That's why their words leave a mark. You don't just remember what they said, you remember how it felt to hear them say it. So here's how you can speak with emotional weight. The simple truth is, you don't need to be loud. You don't need to act dramatically. You just need to feel what you say, as you say it. You have to say things with intention, with presence. So slow down a little. Let your tone match the emotion behind your words. For example, if you're telling a story, relive the story as you share it. If you're saying something kind, you actually mean it. And people will notice, not because you're trying to sound cool, but because your voice is honest, grounded, and full of emotional depth. So the next time you talk, don't just focus on what you're saying. Focus on how it feels to say it. That's how charismatic people speak, but you can't use it alone if you don't learn the second verbal skill. Now the second skill is use silence as a weapon. Ever noticed how some guys just sit back in a conversation, say almost nothing, but somehow, they still dominate the room? That's not an accident. That's silence being used as a weapon, and charismatic men are masters at it. They understand something most people don't. You don't have to talk a lot to be powerful. In fact, the less you say, the more people pay attention when you finally speak. But why does silence feel so powerful? In most social situations, people talk just to fill the gap. Silence makes them nervous, so they ramble, overshare, try to impress. But charismatic men are totally comfortable in silence, because they know silence builds tension, and tension pulls attention. It creates mystery. It gives their words room to breathe. Think of a great movie scene. You know the part where the hero stares for a few seconds before saying that one cold, calm line? That's the moment you remember. Not because of the line itself, but because of the pause before it. Silence makes people lean in, and the psychology behind it is that only powerful people are allowed to pause. In our brains, we associate fast talking with anxiety. Slow pacing, long pauses, that feels like someone in control. Someone who's not in a rush to be heard, because he already knows his value. That's why people lean into what a charismatic man says, not just because of his words, but the silence that surrounds them. So how can you use silence like a charismatic man? It's actually simple. Before you speak, pause. Let people feel the tension build. After you say something powerful, don't rush to explain. Let the silence carry the weight. Practice being calm when others are nervous. That contrast alone gives you authority. Even in awkward moments, don't try to fix the silence. Just hold it and watch how others start reacting to you, instead of the other way around. Charisma isn't just about speaking well. Sometimes, the most powerful move is to say nothing at all. So next time you're in a conversation, don't try to fill every second. Instead, use silence the way a master swordsman uses stillness before the strike. Because the man who controls the silence, controls the room. Now here's the thing. Silence is powerful, but verbal charisma isn't just about knowing when to say something. It's also about how you say it. This leads you to the third skill. Paint a picture through words. There's something deeply magnetic about the way charismatic people speak. It's not just their tone or confidence, it's the way they make you see what they're saying. They don't just talk in plain statements, they speak in images. Instead of giving facts or summaries, they describe moments in a way that brings the listener into the scene. You can feel what they felt. You can imagine where they were. It's like your mind becomes a movie screen, and their words are painting the picture. This is one of the secrets behind their charm. They activate the listener's imagination, and once that happens, a deeper connection is formed. Because people don't remember plain information, they remember how something made them feel. And feelings are triggered by images, emotion, and sensory detail. Most people speak in short, empty phrases that don't leave any impression. But a charismatic person slows down, chooses their words with care, and adds texture. Their language has depth, it has movement, it carries energy that pulls you in. Our brain loves visuals. It's built to respond to stories, sensations, and emotional details. That's why people can recall powerful scenes from movies, or stories from childhood, even after many years. But they forget random facts they heard just yesterday. A charismatic speaker understands this, even if it's on an instinctive level. They don't rush through their sentences. They let the words settle in, one image at a time, almost like brushstrokes on a canvas. And this doesn't require fancy vocabulary or acting skills. It simply requires awareness, being present enough to describe what something looked like, felt like, or sounded like, instead of just naming it. This shift alone can transform the way others hear you. Because now, they're not just listening, they're experiencing the moment with you. It creates emotional resonance, a kind of bond between the speaker and the listener. It makes the moment memorable. It makes you memorable. This is one of the reasons why charismatic people seem so engaging, even when they're talking about something simple. It's not about the subject, it's about how they bring it to life. They turn words into windows, and people can't help but look through. But vivid words alone aren't enough. Even the most beautiful sentences can fall flat if they're delivered like a robot. So you need to improve your verbal charisma through the fourth skill: speak with rhythm and tonality. A truly charismatic man understands this deeply. He treats his voice like an instrument, not just something to speak with, but something that can create tension, emotion, and flow. He doesn't speak in one flat tone from start to finish. He changes the rhythm. He slows down at the right moment. He speeds up when excitement builds. He uses pauses, not out of hesitation, but to create anticipation. Sometimes, he lowers his voice. Other times, he lets it rise just enough to signal something is coming. This constant variation keeps people alert, not in a tense way, but in a curious way. You may not even notice what he's doing at first, but your mind does. Your ears lean in. Your body listens with attention. That's because the human brain is wired for contrast. When someone talks in a predictable rhythm, our brain gets lazy. But when the voice moves, soft to firm, fast to slow, playful to serious, the brain stays engaged. There's an emotional dance happening beneath the words. And here's the best part: you don't need to be loud. You don't need to act. In fact, the most magnetic moments often happen when the voice gets quiet, but controlled. That's when people lean in. That's when a whisper can feel louder than a shout. It's not about performance. It's about presence. A charismatic speaker is present with his words. He feels them. He delivers them like they matter, and that makes them matter to the listener. Even if he's telling a story about a trip to the grocery store, you'll still listen, because it's how he tells it that pulls you in. So if you want to speak in a way that commands attention without ever forcing it, start playing with your tone and rhythm. Don't rush. Don't stay flat. Let your voice move with intention. People will feel it. They won't know why, but they'll be drawn in. Because your voice isn't just sound, it's your presence. And once the voice has rhythm, the next layer of charisma comes from something even deeper, and that is the fifth verbal charisma skill: keep words personal. Charismatic men don't just talk to impress. They talk to relate. They don't hide behind abstract ideas or polished speeches. They open little windows into their real life, their thoughts, their mistakes, even small personal stories. And when they speak, it feels like they're sharing something with you, not at you. This creates intimacy. Imagine someone says, "Confidence is important." Okay, sure. Now imagine they say, "There was a time when I walked into a room and felt like I didn't belong. I couldn't even make eye contact. But I realized confidence isn't something you wait for. It's something you choose to practice." Suddenly, it hits differently. This time you're not just listening, you're feeling. You're inside the story with them. That's what personal communication does. It makes the conversation human. Psychology even backs this up. There's something called the self-disclosure effect. The more someone shares about themselves, the more likable and trustworthy they appear. But here's the key: charismatic people don't overshare or dump trauma on strangers. They reveal just enough to make the moment feel real. They're not trying to be perfect. In fact, their small imperfections, when shared with confidence, make them even more magnetic. Think about someone like Craig Ferguson. He often makes self-deprecating jokes, tells weird little stories about his past, or pokes fun at his own habits. But it never feels like a performance. It feels personal, like he's letting you in. That's what draws people closer. When you make it personal, your words stop sounding like a script and start feeling like a conversation. Even in a group setting, people feel like you're speaking directly to them. That's rare. That's powerful. Because in a world full of polished content, confident voices, and scripted charm, realness stands out. So next time you're speaking, whether it's on a date, a job interview, or just chatting with friends, don't just recite what you know. Tell them where you were in a story, what you learned, what made you laugh, what confused you. That's how you stop sounding like a speaker and start sounding like someone they want to listen to again and again. But here's the catch. It's not just what you share that matters. It's also knowing when to be quiet. Because sometimes, saying nothing at all speaks louder than words. So now you have to master the sixth skill, which is letting silence speak. Here's something most people don't realize. Charismatic people aren't always the ones talking the most. In fact, some of the most powerful moments in a conversation come when they say nothing at all. They know when to pause, when to hold a moment, when to let the silence stretch, just long enough to make you feel something. This isn't awkward silence. It's intentional silence. The kind that makes the air feel heavier, more alive. The kind that draws people in, rather than pushing them away. It's like music without silence between the notes. There's no rhythm, only noise. The same is true for speaking. Now think about someone like Craig Ferguson again. He doesn't rush his words. He pauses after a funny line. He lets the audience laugh, lets his guest react, before he speaks again. And in deeper moments, he doesn't fill the space with nervous chatter. He allows the silence to breathe. Why does this work? Because silence creates tension, and tension creates presence. When you pause, even for a few seconds, people lean in. Their brain starts asking, what's coming next? That anticipation makes your next word feel heavier, more meaningful. It turns a normal sentence into a dramatic one. Psychologically, this taps into something powerful. We're wired to seek patterns and resolution. A pause disrupts the pattern, and the mind needs to pay attention to complete it. That's why charismatic people don't fear silence. They use it. They pause before a key point. They let questions hang in the air. They slow down during emotional moments, allowing the listener to actually feel the words. And the truth is, when you're fully present, silence doesn't feel scary. It feels strong. It shows you're comfortable. You're not trying to rush, impress, or escape discomfort. You're just here. And that calm confidence is rare. So if you want to instantly appear more charismatic, don't always try to say more. Try saying less, and letting those words sink in. Next time you speak, pause after a bold statement. Pause before answering a question. Let silence work for you, not against you. Because when silence is intentional, it becomes powerful. It makes your presence louder than your voice. But silence is only one part of presence. What you say, and how you say it, still matters. And that's why charismatic people use their seventh verbal skill, which is speaking naturally. You've probably seen this before in real life or on TV. Someone walks into a room with a perfectly prepared speech. Every word is memorized. Every joke was rehearsed. And yet, it falls flat. If you ask why, this is because charisma isn't about sounding polished. It's about sounding present. Charismatic people don't just talk, they respond. They don't force a script into the moment. They read the room. They feel the vibe. And then they speak like they're creating the moment with you, not performing in front of you. Take Craig Ferguson again. He rarely sticks to a set of rigid questions. He listens, he watches. And if his guest suddenly says something unexpected, he flows with it, jokes, reacts, asks something spontaneous. It doesn't feel like a performance. It feels like a real moment. That's the magic. When you speak to the moment, people can feel it. It shows that you're alive in the conversation, not trapped in your head. And this is where many people go wrong. They rehearse lines, try to sound clever, or worry about saying the right thing, but that makes you feel stiff, robotic, disconnected. Charisma thrives in the present moment. It's not about having all the right words. It's about showing people you're right here with them. And psychologically, this connects to mirror neurons. When we feel someone is emotionally in sync with us, our brain actually mirrors their energy. That's what creates rapport, trust, and warmth. So how do you speak to the moment? You slow down. You listen. You stop rehearsing in your mind and start observing what's happening around you. Their mood, the energy, even your own gut feeling. You might ditch the plan. You might say something unexpected. You might even pause, smile, and change directions entirely. And that's not a mistake. That's charisma. Because people don't remember what you planned to say. They remember how you made them feel in that moment. So if you want to come across as magnetic, real, and unforgettable, don't overscript your life. Stay grounded. Be playful. Be flexible. Speak from the now, not from memory. Because charisma isn't written. It's felt, moment by moment. But here's the twist. Being present isn't just about listening or reacting. Sometimes, the most charismatic people need to break the rules, which is their eighth verbal skill. Here's a truth nobody talks about. Charismatic people don't follow every rule of conversation. In fact, some of the most magnetic personalities are the ones who break the rules, on purpose. They interrupt, but only when they're overflowing with emotion or passion. They tease, but in a way that sparks connection, not offense. They ignore social norms, but somehow make it feel charming. They don't act perfectly polite all the time. They act real. Because deep down, people aren't attracted to safe. They're drawn to people who bring surprise, edge, and unpredictability without being reckless or disrespectful. Think of Craig Ferguson again. He flirts playfully. He mocks himself. Sometimes he'll ditch a question halfway through and just start dancing or making a wild face. And yet, people lean in because it doesn't feel fake. It feels like freedom. He's not trying to be offensive. He's just not trapped by a script. He's alive in the moment, playing with the boundaries, and inviting you to play too. And there's deep psychology here. Charisma often taps into what psychologists call benign violation theory. It's the idea that we're drawn to people who slightly break expectations, but in a way that still feels safe and fun. Too much rule breaking? You feel uneasy. Too little? You feel bored. But just enough? You feel hooked. And that's the balance charismatic people master. They might say something slightly too bold, then smile, and immediately disarm the tension. They might ignore formal small talk and jump into something deeper, weirder, or more playful. They don't always play it right, but they play it memorable. So what does this mean for you? It means you don't have to be overly polished. You don't have to worry about every little social rule. If you feel like teasing a friend, and you know they'll laugh, do it. If you want to jump into a bold opinion, and you're ready to own it, go for it. Charisma isn't about staying in line. It's about dancing at the edge, and knowing you can handle what comes next. So don't be afraid to bend the rules. Just know why you're doing it, because when you break the rules with charm and awareness, people won't pull away, they'll lean closer. The truth is, you don't need to be born charismatic. You just need to learn the rhythm, feel your words, pause with purpose, speak with contrast, play with energy, and sometimes break the script just a little, because charisma isn't about impressing. It's about connecting in a way that feels undeniably alive. If you like this breakdown and you're serious about developing a magnetic personality, subscribe now, because this is just the beginning. Thanks for watching. Until the next video.